Well, welcome back, everyone. I think we're going to get started here. So hopefully you got a little more coffee. Again, I'm Janet Hine. I'm the Director of Admissions. Very lovely compliments from my boss, which I really appreciate. Though, I have to tell you, I've actually been doing admissions longer than him. So I think I figured out I've been doing admissions for over 35 years, law school admissions, at 3 different schools. So, and this, of course, by far is my favorite, as you will learn throughout the day, I think. So, welcome again. I just wanted to mention a couple little tiny things that Dean Canada didn't get to. First of all, if you all know, restrooms and drinking fountains are over in this corner on every floor. Also, starting at 12:30 p.m., there'll be a table inside our library for those of you who want to deal with some of your travel reimbursement information, or if your guest wants to do that while you're doing something else, that's fine. But there'll be staff. You'll see a table right inside the library, and they'll be there throughout the afternoon. At the end of our session with alumni, we will have our student fellows take you over to the union by groups, just so we can try to not have such a long line at lunch. So that's what we will be doing. And then make sure, those of you who are guests, that during the student life panel for the admitted students, we have a panel for supporters right next door, led by our assistant dean, Dean Aviva Orenstein. And I think she'll give you a lot of really great information. And then, as Dean Canada said, we hope you'll stay for the reception at 3:30. So, having said that, I would like to just quickly actually, I might have our faculty here introduce themselves, but I'm very grateful they're here today, and they're going to tell you about life at Mauer and a couple other questions that I'm going to start off with. But this session is for you, so please do not hesitate to interrupt me, ask questions. That's what we're here for, to answer your questions. So, first of all, we have Professor Ryan Scott, Professor Christy Ochoa, and Professor Steve Sanders. And I will maybe ask them to give a little bit about your background and maybe a little bit about why you chose to become a faculty member here at IU Mauer. Professor Scott, you want to start?
Sure. Well, thanks for being here. It's delightful to see all of you. I came to the law school 10 years ago. This is my 10th year of teaching. I did not come to law school thinking I was going to be a professor. I clerked after I graduated for a judge in Salt Lake City, Utah. I then went to D.C. and I served for a year as a Bristow Fellow in the Solicitor General's office. That's the office that represents the United States and federal agencies and officers in the U.S. Supreme Court. And then spent a couple of years working at O'Melveny & Myers in the Supreme Court and appellate litigation shop there. And that entire time I was writing articles because I was excited to become a scholar. And as great as all of those jobs were, and as excited as I was to litigate, and I did enjoy it quite a bit, my passion was writing articles. And I had worked on a bunch of sentencing cases when I was in the government, and a lot of my articles were about criminal sentencing and criminal justice, law and policy. So I parlayed those pieces into a chance to be here. And I confess, some of you might be in this position, I had never been to Indiana before I interviewed for this job. I had grown up in Minnesota. It had never occurred to me to be here. It's one of these jobs where you go where the jobs are. But boy, I could not have been luckier. I just absolutely found the perfect spot. And you asked why we chose here. I was fortunate when I was that it was a decision. I had a couple of offers, and we can talk a little bit about why. But on paper, I had some of my trusted advisors telling me that I should go to a different school that had given me an offer because they were ranked slightly higher by U.S. News and World Report. And I did not. I just had a better feel at Indiana, and we can talk about why that is. But it was by far the best decision I could have made. I'm just tremendously happy here, and I'm glad I didn't take the advice to just decide based on that kind of criterion.
Just a little, if I can interrupt, a little side note. I was at the same law school working there that Professor Scott attended, and we figured we missed each other by 3 or 4 years. I left there to go somewhere else, so we both experienced one of the same law schools anyway.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Christiana Ochoa. I teach contracts to first-year law students, and so if you come, there's a good chance that I'll have you in class, and I absolutely look forward to that. In addition to my role as a professor here, where I teach contracts to first-year students, but then international law topics in the upper-level curriculum, my footprint is increasingly administrative. So in addition to my professorial role, I also am our Associate Dean for Research and Faculty Affairs, so I really attend to the research life of the school to the best of my ability, though the truth is that when you've got colleagues as great as these, there's not a lot that you have to do except just, cheer, which I like supporting the incredible research that gets done here and promoting it. And so that's one of my roles. In addition, the university has recently opened an office in Mexico, and I'm the academic director of our IU Mexico Global Gateway. And that really dovetails really nicely with another role that I have here at the law school, which is we have the Stewart Center on the Global Legal Profession runs the Stewart Fellows Program, which is a program that puts students usually after their first year in 12 different countries. We often have as many as 30 students going to 12 different countries, and my research and my area of interest has always been Latin America, and so I place students in Argentina and in Mexico right now, and that is an absolute delight because those experiences are often difficult, of course. It's your first time practicing in a role not as an undergraduate or a graduate of an undergraduate institution, but rather as a student who is clearly going to become a lawyer. And so it's your first experience working as a proto-lawyer. And that just by itself is difficult in the domestic space, but when you're doing it in a different language and in a different culture, it's really difficult. But it can be life-changing in incredibly gratifying ways, and so it's fun to get to do that. I chose Indiana partially because of that global profile. The person who was the dean at the time that I came was Lauren Robel, who is now our provost. And I've had the incredible fortune of working with her for the now increasingly long time that I've been here. And I was very attracted by the global footprint and also the global profile and the global ambitions of Indiana University that are reflected here in the law school as well. And that was not just what would you call it, a false attraction. It turns out that when I got here, if there was anything false about it, it did not appear as profound as it actually is. It is an incredibly global place. The fact that this law school is on a Research One campus, that it is a highly multidisciplinary faculty. We are really attentive, not just to the sort of black letter law, the rules, but really the way that the rules are shaped by society and also the impacts that those rules have on society. And that multidisciplinarity and the global focus are really the reasons that I came to Indiana, and particularly they're the reasons that I have chosen to stay. Almost all of my colleagues, it may in fact be all of my colleagues, have had the opportunities since arriving here to go to other places. And that's when you really know that you've got an incredible place, is when your faculty has the opportunity to go to other places and they choose to stay. And that is true for really, we've lost very, very few people during the almost 2 decades that I've been here. And that's a real testament to the student body, to the research life of this place, and to the community that we have amongst ourselves, but also the relationships that we have with our students.
Mm-hmm. I'm Steve Sanders. I teach constitutional law for first-year students and then some other things in the upper division. My experience is a little bit the opposite of Professor Scott's. I sought to join the faculty at Maurer here because I knew something about it, knew a fair amount about the campus and the law school before I became a faculty member in 2013. So I actually came to IU as an undergraduate, so I've had a long history at this institution, and I worked for over a decade in a couple of different administrative positions on the campus. And that gave me a good sense of this campus's history and traditions, the role it plays as a state university, but the role it also plays as a global research institution. Law was sort of a second career thing for me. I was happy doing administrative work, but for various reasons I decided to go to law school. I left. I went to Michigan. I decided I would go to the best law school that I could get into because it would give me opportunities to come back here, potentially to work here as a faculty member. I did my law degree. I practiced at a firm in Chicago, Mayer Brown, doing appellate and Supreme Court litigation work. I clerked for a judge on the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, one of the federal courts of appeals, the one that sits in Chicago. But I'm always candid when I say it was my dream job to come back to this place. I'm a strong believer in that organizations and institutions have cultures, that they have personalities that, again, are shaped by their history, their traditions, their alumni, their geographic setting. The kinds of people who have come here and helped to shape the institution over the years. And so I feel very strongly about Indiana University as a place where I feel very much at home and very much a part of. But also during those years I was working outside of the law school in administration, I got to know many of the faculty here. I got to know something about this law school. I saw my share of dysfunctional academic departments and places where people were unhappy, often over sort of petty, long-standing grievances, and this is not that kind of place. This is the kind of place where people, students and faculty, genuinely feel a sense of community. And so that was important to me, to be at a place that was that would give you the independence that a faculty member traditionally has to follow their interests and chart their own course with research and teaching, but also a place where you actually enjoyed the thought of coming in to the office each day, both because of the students you would get to work with and the faculty colleagues you would get to interact with.
Wonderful. Thanks. Any questions so far? I'll kind of move on to my next topic. Let you soak that all in. So, and I really do agree with what all of our faculty said about the collegiality. Just to give an example, just from my standpoint, I think the first day I started working here, I had 6 faculty take me out, literally the first day. Now, I'm not in charge of the department, Dean Canada is. It was summer when most faculty are off doing other things, yet 6 faculty members decided there's a new staff person, so we're going to get together with them. So I really can, from personal experience, certainly agree with everything that was said about the collegiality. I think it's very true here. And maybe I'll start with Professor Ochoa. Can you talk just a little bit about some of the distinctive qualities of our law students? What kind of stands out to you about our law students?
As I said again, for those of you who are in the women's breakfast this morning, I teach contracts, which is a first-year law student course. It's taught in the fall semester, and my favorite time slot is the first time slot of the day, which means that I get students in the first minute of their law school life, and you know, that's an incredible privilege. So I do think that actually all 3 of us teach first-year classes, and so we have a lot of interaction with our first-year students, and here's some of the things that really I think are remarkable. People try really hard. They work really hard. And as they're working really hard, they're nice to each other. So, you know, I went to Harvard for law school, and people were generally pretty nice. But it was also really clear that you were really in it for yourself. And if you weren't, you were probably going to be falling behind a bit. And I don't think that that's the case here. Here, I think it's quite the opposite, that if you're not working with others, you may well be falling behind a bit. It's a place where people learn from each other and with each other. And that is remarkable. It's something that I encourage a lot in my class. Another thing that I think is really, great about this law school is the number of students who come to my office hours. I encourage it. I want to get to know my students. And those office hours are incredibly important. They're incredibly important because, obviously, we're talking about the substance of the class, of course. But often those conversations turn into, more conversations about what you want from your law school career. And those are gratifying for me, but I think they're really informative for you. And so I think that this is also a group of students who are really thoughtful about how to plot their way through their legal careers. And I think that's partially a credit to the 1L legal professions class that we have, that from the very beginning is helping you think about what does it mean to be a lawyer? What are the various things that lawyers can do in the world? When I went to law school, I didn't know a lawyer, not one. And so I would have really benefited from a course like that one. I think we have very limited images of what lawyers do in society, and a course like that one really helps to expand your vision. And then that leads to conversations in our offices about how do I chart a course that looks like that one. So that's another feature, I think, of our law students that is really wonderful. And, the last thing I would say is after the first semester, students get grades, and I'm really impressed with how many students across the spectrum of the grades that are distributed come to talk to me about their exams afterwards. That's true for the students who get the A and the A star, and that's true for the students who do far less well than they thought they would. And I think that's also really special because that suggests to me that it's a group of people who are self-reflective and that want to continue to improve regardless of where they came out in that first semester of law school. And I'm always really, really impressed by that as well.
Great. Anything to add, either from Professor Scott or Professor Sanders?
I like, so diversity can be a buzzword. I like the diversity of our student body in the broadest sense, racially, ethnically, geographically, but also their interests, their political commitments. The students that I have formed close relationships who've been some of my best students over the years, some of them are destined for big law firms. Others of them are destined for public service and public interest work. That's their passion. Students, I think, don't feel the need to be on one particular track at this place. It is a place where you can find your own path if you invest the time and the thought and the energy into deciding what you want to do, into seeking out the faculty members and others who can help you with those things, the networking that you do. It is a place where you don't have to just depend on following the herd or on the idea that somebody's just going to hand you a job. You really do make your own future and make your own career.
I'll add one more thing. I echo the sense that our students are hardworking and serious. I feel so spoiled as a professor that my students come to class prepared. They care about the work. It's so nice. I can't imagine teaching like high school or something like that where everyone is there because mom said you had to be there, right? These are the people who come to this school are there for the right reasons, and they're there to get something out of it. I'll add one more thing that I've noticed about our student body. We have students who are self-starters, who take initiative and who are willing to work hard at things they care about a lot. This week, I was just running through the schedule in my mind. On Tuesday, we had the Singing for Summer Salaries event. The Public Interest Law Foundation here at the law school puts on an annual fundraiser to make money to support, to get scholarships for students who want to work at public interest firms and otherwise wouldn't get any payment over the summer. So that they can do that, they put on a big event, and it's all student planned, and it was amazing. Wednesday night, through the Bradley Fellow program, we had a movie night where we watched a film and then had a discussion afterward. All of the Bradley, I do a criminal law and criminal procedure. The Bradley Fellows program is a new program for students who want to be public defenders or want to work as prosecutors, and they put together a speaker series. The students figured out who to invite and have put together all sorts of great programming to help themselves and their colleagues to get a better sense of what their career will look like. Thursday was the Women's Law Caucus auction, where a bunch of students through that organization raised a whole bunch of money for our Protective Order Project here at the law school and for the Middleway House, which is a tremendous nonprofit organization that provides services for the most vulnerable people in our community. All of this is student-driven, and that's just this week.
And I'll just chime in because this coming Wednesday, I think Professor Scott's going to be helping out with something. We have students who go to lots of different, this is 2Ls and 3Ls generally, external moot court competitions where you actually get experience writing a brief and doing an argument. And every year, one of the many we participate in is at the Williams Institute at UCLA. It's a moot court that's always focused on LGBTQ legal issues, and we have students who have taken the initiative to register and write a brief, and they'll be competing in that, and we help put them through their paces and help them practice oral arguments so they do very well once they get out there.
Wonderful. Yeah, busy week. I have to just put kudos in for one of the admissions staff who you may or may not have talked to, Mary Beth Boyer, who answers our phone, is a baker extraordinaire. So she made a wonderful baked goods Mardi Gras thing for the Women's Caucus, and one of our fellows bought it. He was very excited. So we all try to, certainly contribute to all these activities as well. I'm going to pause with my talking points again and see if there's any questions from anyone about anything our faculty can answer. Yeah, in the back, Evan.
Hi, Evan.
Hi, Evan.
Can you talk about how you approach teaching and what your favorite teaching styles are for the class?
Who wants to go?
Yeah. So I think my style, other than seminars, which is sort of a unique situation where you're really sitting around a table and it is a discussion of an article or a book or something like that. For all of my classes, I think my teaching style is a mixture. It's a blend of lecture, cold calls. Most of us still do cold call. I find it valuable, but encouraging student questions and discussions as well. I use some PowerPoint, but I don't outline my lecture in detail. I give at the beginning of a topic some bullet points, sort of a roadmap. At the end of a topic, some these are the most important takeaways. But then I love to illustrate lectures. I teach first year con law, and it's my favorite class because I like teaching 1Ls because they're enthusiastic. You sort of kind of know what they already know and know what they don't, and sort of everyone's coming in with the same set of expectations and background as far as their legal knowledge. And I love to illustrate, to bring cases to life by when we read Loving versus Virginia, famous interracial marriage case. I play a clip from a documentary that tells how that case fell into the lap of two young attorneys who were very green and took that case all the way to the Supreme Court. I'll play snippets from oral arguments just to give you a sense to have. It's important to me that students know that in constitutional law, these aren't just dusty old cases, or this isn't just a rarefied practice for people who are at the very top of their careers. I try to illustrate how constitutional law cases are being litigated every day in the lower federal courts, and to show examples of decisions in cases that students could be working on in their first couple of years of practice if they're at a medium-sized law firm or in a state attorney general's office, for example. So I hope that's somewhat responsive.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
I also, just in terms of teaching style, I'm also, the Socratic method is typical in law schools, and I think a lot of us use it, at least to some extent. I will say, by comparison with some professors I've seen when I was a student, I'd say the Socratic method as practiced at IU is a little gentler. One of my classmates was reduced to tears in class by one of my contracts professor when I was a student. It was brutally unkind of him. There was no need for him to behave that way. And unfortunately, there are some professors who do that. But that doesn't happen here. To all of us as teachers, the Socratic method has lots of advantages, but it should never be used to sort of just bully people. And so I think we're a lot more supportive. It's a kinder, gentler version of Socratic questioning, I'd say.
I'm going to fill in there a little bit. I'll just say it really clearly. I'm demanding. I am. I want you to work hard. I really, really do. But this is the reason, not for the sake of working hard, right? But because there's a lot to do in the first semester of law school. You come in as somebody who lives in the world, and you have a lot of information about contracts. Again, I teach contracts. You have a lot of information about contracts before you walk in. But a lot of that information is the kind of information that your clients will have in the future. Your job during the first semester of law school is to move from that lay knowledge to being an expert in contracts, because there's a good chance that by the time that we're done, you won't have another class in contracts until you graduate and until you take the bar exam and until you're a practicing attorney. And so there's a lot to do during the course of a semester, and there's no way to get through it except with a pretty demanding and rigorous pace. So I don't want to pretend like it's just soft, because it's not. Some of it's really hard work, and we can't make any apologies for that. It's going to be the case, no matter what. That said, I think it is incumbent on us to make it interesting, and to try to make it the kind of challenging and demanding that is fun, right? So you've all done incredibly well in undergraduate, or you wouldn't be here right now. So you know what it means to be challenged in a way that is invigorating and fun for you. And that's what I strive for in our class. And I do it by some of the methods that my colleagues were just speaking about. So there are a lot of ways that contracts intersect with your daily life in very important ways that are currently unseeable for you. And to expose that, kind of in the way that the Matrix exposes the Matrix, is my job. And it's so much fun. And so what I really think about is our semester being a 14-week-long exploration together and conversation together as we expose the matrix of contracts.
Thank you.
Yes?
Hi. So I've heard law school tests can be pretty hard. Can you guys kind of elaborate on what differentiates like a high score from an average and what you're looking for in that test?
Who wants to start?
You can go first.
So it's a great question and a timely one. We're getting about the mid-semester point right now, and my first-year criminal law students are asking me exactly that question. I do every year in my criminal law class, I do a practice exam at the mid-semester point. It's an optional exercise, so right before spring break, my students can take a test, and I will grade it, blind grade it, just like we do with final exams, and then give them back. It doesn't count for anything. It's not. It's optional, but if they do it, that's a chance to get some feedback. I'd say the best on an essay test, which is the bulk of I do a little bit of multiple choice questions, which you having prepared for law school, you know multiple choice pretty well. But on an essay exam, I'm looking for answers that can understand where there's a clear right answer or a clear wrong answer. But more than that, the ones where there's a lot of ambiguity, where there's a lot of room for argument, and exams that can articulate the best arguments on both sides. I think those are the richest exams, those that go into a lot of depth and are willing to acknowledge the uncertainty about areas where because we do that on purpose. We don't write questions where the answers are easy. We're always trying to make it shades of gray and room for interpretation.
So in answering that question, I've got two analogies that if you take my contracts class, you'll hear again. The first is that I think what we do in class on any given day is like learning how to play one note on a piano. We learn one doctrine, right? It's one day, and it's a new doctrine. And we learn how to play that note, and we learn how to play it in various ways, right? We learn how to play it very loud and fast. We learn how to play it soft and light. We learn how to play that note in various ways, how it interplays in the law. So we learn that doctrine thoroughly. One of the things that's really challenging is that a law exam asks you not to play one note, right, but to play the piano. And so that's the work that is really your work outside of class, is to learn how those notes integrate with each other. And by the end of the semester, the difference between a law exam that is really strong and one that is a little bit weaker is the ability to see which notes have to be played and how they interplay with each other. That's really a tremendous and difficult skill in order to practice that skill, because there's no way to do it other than to practice, right? The Jacobs School right down the road here, you'll see that there are practice rooms there, lots of them, and the only way that those musicians become the musicians they are is by the many, many hours of practice they do in their practice rooms. Now here, they do it alone. You will do a lot of practicing by yourself, but you'll also do it in groups. And in my class, I have it's actually a mandatory exercise that requires you to take a practice exam and then to work with others in your class and a group of students to work through what you've just tried to do. And then together we dissect that exam, and I give you the top answers from a prior year when that exam was the actual exam for the class. Because I believe that you all have very different experiences sitting in this room right now, and certainly sitting in our classes in the first year of law school. Some of you have had grandparents and parents and aunts and uncles and cousins and brothers and sisters who are all lawyers. your level of preparation is really different than the student who has walked into law school and doesn't know a single lawyer. That's really different. And the idea that you guys are at the same starting point is obviously false. And but you're all going to be sitting for the same exam, and an anonymously graded exam 14 weeks later. And so in order to try to level that playing field, we do this exam. Now, it's true, nobody's taken a law exam, right? And that way you're all the same. But practice is really the key.
I love the music analogy. I hadn't thought of it that way, but I think it's very accurate. Another thing I tell students, something that is unique about sort of legal education in law is the process of legal analysis. That is, an exam shouldn't just in expository or narrative fashion tell me everything you've learned or everything about this case. You really need to, you're given a set of facts, and I say, you're a district court judge or you're an attorney or you're a clerk, and you have to figure out, is it this precedent or that precedent that governs this particular set of facts? And tell me why, integrate those facts with the legal framework that you've learned a legal framework in my class. Now you need to tell me the facts lead you to this case, or this case as the governing law, and why. And another thing I tell students, so most of you know law school is graded on a curve. That means it is, possible for lots of people to sort of substantively get the basic right answer, but it does matter at the margins because the curve forces us to make these kinds of distinctions. How clearly do you articulate your ideas? Do you write in sort of punchy paragraphs, not just pages and pages without a paragraph break? How well organized is your analysis? Because I think that counts. Part of applying the law, part of doing legal analysis is being able to explain to a court, to a client, to someone else why the law is this way. And so your ability to discuss ideas clearly, to not get off on irrelevant tangents, to maintain a focus, to organize an answer, to me is very important.
Great. Yes?
If you guys could go back in time and talk to your former selves, right as you guys were getting ready to start law school, what is one thing that you would have told yourself either to make it more enjoyable for you, to be more successful in your first year, or to chart a better path to where you wanted to be or where you are?
She just read off my list for the last question, so thank you. Would like to start. Steve?
Well, so I was older when I'd had sort of a career before I went to law school, and so I think that's valuable. You know yourself. I was very happy in law school. I think the one thing that I would have thought about was being more open to exploring areas of law I thought I wasn't necessarily interested in. I knew I wanted to be a litigator, and I knew specifically I wanted to do appellate litigation rather than trial work, and that's generally how I chose my courses. But there are definitely things that I didn't take in law school that I now regret, so I wish I had done more talking to people in practice or in teaching to say, what would be the value of taking this particular class? Might this fit in some way to what I might eventually be teaching or practicing? So it's great to have goals and have a clear sense of what you want to do, but also don't let that blind you to the possibility that something else might be out there that could figure in, it could be helpful to you in ways you just can't imagine right now.
Great. It's an interesting question. It requires a lot of self-reflection, right? And I think everybody's answer would probably be quite different, and it's about your own knowledge of your own failings, right? And so really what you're asking is what did you do that was sort of self-failing that you might have done differently and better? And so it's a fabulous question. So I'll tell you two that'll tell you things about me. Despite the fact that I'm a law professor and speak in front of large crowds on a regular basis, I'm actually pretty shy, and I think that that's an impediment. And I wish I would have more quickly and more aggressively convinced myself that shyness is unnecessary. That when I'm in a room with people who I need to meet, that I just need to meet them And those conversations are always nice. In fact, people want to meet you too. And that's true of practicing lawyers and judges. And no matter how impressive their credentials are, they want to talk to you. You're a law student. You've got a career to plot. They want to talk to you. And I just never really believed that when I was a law student. And it's taken a long time to get to the place where I actually really believe it. And in fact, I think it's taken until I'm now on the other side of that, right? Because I know that I really want to talk to you. So that's one. And the other one, is I think that law school can be stressful. But, I was driving down the road one day, and I was paying attention to how I was driving. I was gripping the wheel like this. And all I was doing was driving from point A to point B. I wasn't angry. I was just stressed, right? And I thought, you know what? Gripping this wheel this tight is not going to get me there any faster. So you may as well just enjoy the ride. Yeah. And, you're still going to drive the same road. You're still going to be careful on the whole way. You're still going to go 3 miles over the speed limit. But you don't have to grip the wheel so tight. Enjoy the ride. Look at the view. And that, I think, is really important. Try to enjoy the ride and be grateful that you're on it, because not everybody gets this incredible opportunity.
Professor Scott, anything to add?
Yeah, I think this is a similar piece of advice. I would have told myself at the start of law school, don't panic. You are not behind everyone else. Everyone is just as confused as you are.
That's true.
You don't need to be in the library until midnight or you're somehow failing. I think a lot of people who have done really well as undergraduate students think that they somehow have to become machines to be good at law school, and if they're not, sort of going a million miles an hour all the time, that they're behind and in trouble. And I in my first year of law school especially, I deprived myself of all things. I wouldn't go to the movies. I wouldn't hang out with my friends. I thought I had to be some sort of law hermit who just did nothing but study all day. What a terrible way to live. So being in law school is transformative in a lot of ways. But it doesn't change who you are. And so the advice I would give to myself to make my first year especially better would be, don't forget who you are. Don't forget the way you have always lived your life, that you did a good job as an undergraduate. Don't panic. You're fine. That would be my advice.
Right. Well, just in terms of time, I think we're going to sort of end this session, but I really want to thank our professors who are here today. Thank you so much.